Okay, we've got to work this last example, and then I'm going to show you how to use Desmos to help you if you get stuck on these. If I have this last one, 27a to the third minus 8, I would say what multiplies 3 times to give me 27. So that's 3 times 3 times 3 would be 27. Then I would say multiplies 3 times to give me 8. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And once again, if it's an even, you can only check even numbers like 2, 4, 6. If it's an odd, you check odd numbers like 3, 5, 7. And that'll keep you from having to check too many numbers before you get the right answer. Then remember this, I'm going to do first times first. So first times first is 3a times 2 is 6a. I'm sorry. That's not first times first at all. First times first would be 3a times 3a, which would be 9a squared. Then 3a times 2 would be 6a. And then 2 times 2 would be 4. So it's first times first times last, and last times last. So if you get that first parenthesis right, you follow that rule, you'll be good. And then your last step is use SOAP. So my signs are the same, meaning the first one's a minus. The opposite, so the opposite of a minus is a plus, and the last sign is always a positive. And I have basically used this to factor this into two things. Now we're talking about how we could use Desmos and synthetic division to factor, and I'm going to work one or two examples like that. If I have an x to the third minus 64, I can tell from this that I have an x-intercept of 4. So that means one of my solutions of this graph is x equals 4. And I could always divide that out using synthetic division to check and see what one of my factors was of x cubed minus 64. Break it down into smaller pieces. To do this, I have to list my coefficients. So I have 1x to the third. I have no x squared. So since I skipped the x squared, put a 0. I also have no plane x's. And then I have minus 64 for my last number. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do synthetic division. So remember, bring down the 1. Multiply the number on the bottom. 1 times 4 is 4. And then I'm adding these numbers up. This is just if you need a refresher, you can look at our synthetic division video from a couple days ago, and that'll help. 4 times 4 is 16. Added up is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. Added up is 0. Now it's a good thing this remainder is 0, because this remainder 0 means x equals 4 really is a solution. That's pretty good because the graph said that x equals 4 was a solution. The graph says it does cross at 4. So if you didn't get a remainder of 0, you would know something didn't go right with your synthetic division, or you finding your intercept from the graph. Now if x is 4, that means I can go ahead and fill this back in. This started with an x to the third, so after I divide out an x, I'm left with an x squared, a positive 4x, I always go down by 1, and a plus 16. What that means is one of my factors, x squared plus 4x plus 16, is one factor of x to the third minus 64. I can also use this thing over here to get another factor. So my other factor based on x equals 4 is going to be x minus 4, because remember I could subtract 4 from both sides, and basically moving that 4 so it was over there with the x inside the parenthesis means that this whole thing here would be the same thing as this. If you are not convinced, you can always check your answer to a fraction problem using Desmos by simply typing in the answer I just got, x minus 4 times x squared. You can type in the 1 if you want, but it's not necessary, plus 4x plus 16, and you can see the graph is exactly the same. If you factor correctly, even if you zoom out to see more of the graph, it's going to remain exactly the same. So basically, if the two equations match, have the same graph, you know you factored correctly, and that's another way to check your work using Desmos. Or if you don't know how to get started at all, you can find an x-intercept and divide it out with synthetic division and kind of factor that way. Same thing we had otherwise. When you do get a harder one with a number in front, it's a little bit trickier to use synthetic division, so it's a good idea to know factoring if you can. But for a lot of these, you can just use synthetic division and get at least one of your factors, if not both of them, very easily.